From spending your entire paycheck at Costco, to filling your garage with canned soup, to refreshing the CDC website every 5 minutes, this is the smartest order to prepare for a health crisis, step by step. And spoiler, while some people bought N95 masks for $50 each, others quietly stockpiled the unglamorous essentials that saved their lives. Get this, in the first month of the pandemic, the average American household spent over $450 on panic purchases, but studies later showed that 60% of that spending was completely wasted on stuff they never used or didn't actually need. Meanwhile, preventable deaths from lack of clean water, basic medication access, and zero emergency planning. Insanely high. Pretty wild that we'll drop hundreds on hand sanitizer, but won't spend 20 minutes making an actual plan. But first, let's start with what actually matters, in the exact order you need to do it. So here's mistake number 1 that nearly everyone makes. During the first 2 weeks of COVID-19, Americans panic bought over $734 million worth of toilet paper. That's enough TP to last each household for nearly 2 years. But turns out, buying supplies before you have a plan is like buying a parachute mid-fall and hoping you figure out how to use it on the way down. Not ideal. The problem was, people saw empty shelves on social media, and their lizard brains kicked in. Monkey see, monkey panic buy 50 bottles of Purell. It's called social proof, and it's why we ended up with garages full of hand sanitizer, but no idea what to actually do in an emergency. Pretty stupid when you think about it. Because here's what you should actually do first. Step 1 is boring but critical. Assess your real risks based on where you live, your health conditions, and your family situation. A 70-year-old diabetic in Florida preparing for hurricanes needs completely different supplies than a healthy 30-year-old in California worried about earthquakes. Duh. But nobody does this. They just copy whatever they saw on TikTok and hope for the best. Step 2 is even more boring. Set up your information infrastructure before anything else. Reliable news sources, emergency alert systems on your phone, knowing where your local government posts crisis updates. During Hurricane Katrina, people died because they didn't know evacuation routes had changed. They had supplies, but no information. That's insanely backwards. And get this, studies after major disasters show that roughly 30% of panic purchases never get used. That's billions of dollars on stuff people bought because they were scared, not because they actually needed it. Meanwhile, the things that actually save lives in the first 72 hours? Water, medication access, and having a basic emergency plan. Not 400 rolls of Charmin. But okay, you've assessed your risks and set up alerts. Now what? So what kills people first in a health crisis? Hint, it's not the virus. It's not the disease. It's not even other people fighting over supplies. Nope. In major disasters, contaminated water and bad sanitation kill more people than almost anything else. During the 2010 Haiti earthquake, the quake itself killed around 160,000 people. But then, a cholera outbreak from contaminated water killed another 10,000 over the next few years. That's like one Red Bull's worth of bad decisions leading to years of death. Pretty insane when you think about it, which brings us to step 3. Water storage. And this is where the math gets real. You need a minimum of 1 gallon per person per day. That's for drinking and basic hygiene. For a family of 4, that's 56 gallons for just 2 weeks, which is like filling up your car's gas tank 4 times, except with water, and you're storing it in your house. The good news is water storage doesn't have to be expensive. Yeah, you can drop $500 on fancy food-grade water tanks that look like they belong in a doomsday bunker, or you can spend $35 on a water bob, which is basically a giant plastic bladder that sits in your bathtub and holds 100 gallons. Fill it when you hear a crisis is coming, and boom, you're set for a while. But here's what people don't talk about. Municipal water systems fail way faster than you think. During hurricanes or infrastructure collapses, you've got maybe 24 to 48 hours before tap water becomes unreliable or straight up contaminated. And that brings us to step 4, which is even less fun to discuss. Sanitation, which is a fancy word for what do you do with your poop when toilets stop working. Charming, I know. But when sewage systems fail, diseases like cholera and dysentery spread insanely fast. That's literally what killed thousands after the Haiti earthquake. Not the collapse itself, but people drinking water contaminated with human waste. The solution? Portable toilets, heavy-duty trash bags, kitty litter, and a bucket. Yeah, it's gross. But dysentery kills you through dehydration in about 3 days if untreated. So maybe invest $50 in a camping toilet and some supplies. Okay, you won't die of dysentery. Progress. But here's where things get complicated. And by complicated, I mean this is where your prep goes from inconvenient to legitimately stressful. During the first month of COVID-19, medication shortages hit pharmacies nationwide. Antibiotics, inhalers, insulin, even basic stuff like albuterol for asthma. Shelves went empty fast, and unlike toilet paper, you can't just substitute medications with paper towels and hope for the best. Step 5 is prescription medication stockpiling. And yes, this is legal if you do it right. Talk to your doctor about getting 90-day supplies instead of 30-day refills. Most insurance companies allow this. Stock up on the essentials. If you take blood pressure meds, diabetes medication, or anything that keeps you alive, get as much as legally possible. But here's the dark reality. Some medications can't be stockpiled. Insulin has a shelf life of only a few months even when refrigerated. That's like 3 Red Bulls worth of time. Controlled substances like ADHD meds or painkillers? Good luck convincing your doctor to give you extra. And if you need chemotherapy or dialysis, you're basically screwed in a major crisis. That's a pretty terrifying thought if you or someone in your family depends on these things. Step 6 is over-the-counter essentials and basic first aid. We're talking ibuprofen, acetaminophen, antidiarrheals like loperamide, antihistamines, and if you can legally get them, fish antibiotics. Yeah, fish antibiotics. They're the same as human antibiotics, just marketed differently. Amoxicillin is amoxicillin whether it's for your kid or your aquarium. This is insanely important because hospitals overflow within 48 hours of a major crisis starting. Get this. During Hurricane Katrina, hospitals in New Orleans were completely overwhelmed in less than 2 days. ICU beds filled up, ventilators ran out. People died in hospital hallways waiting for care. The average major city has maybe 200 to 500 ICU beds total. That's for a population of hundreds of thousands or millions. Do the math, it doesn't work. And first aid needs to go beyond Band-Aids. Wound care supplies, burn treatment, splints for fractures, tourniquets for serious bleeding. A complete medical kit costs anywhere from $150 to $400, depending on how thorough you get. But compare that to dying from an infected cut because you couldn't get to a hospital. And if you thought meds were expensive, wait until you see food prep costs. So how much does it cost to feed a family for a month during a crisis? The answer will either shock you or make you laugh, depending on how much you trust Instagram preppers. Because those fancy freeze-dried meal kits that influencers love? They'll run you about $3,000 to $5,000 for a month's supply for 4 people. That's insane. Meanwhile, rice and beans from Costco? Maybe $300 for the same time frame. That's like 10 Chipotle burritos worth of difference. Except you're feeding a family for a month. Step 7 is calculate your actual caloric needs. The average person needs about 2,000 calories per day just to function. For a family of 4, that's 8,000 calories per day. Over 30 days, you're looking at 240,000 calories total. That's a lot of food, and most people wildly underestimate this number and end up starving on day 15. because they thought 5 cans of soup would last a week. Here's where people screw up. MREs, which are meals ready to eat from the military, cost about $8 to $12 each. They're portable and convenient, sure, but you'd need 360 of them to feed a family for a month. Do the math, that's over $3,000. Compare that to 50 pounds of white rice at $40, 50 pounds of dried beans at $50, and 40 cans of tuna or chicken at $80. You're looking at maybe $250 to $400 total for basic calorie coverage. Step 8 is building strategic food storage. White rice lasts 30 years if stored properly. Brown rice, 6 months max because of the oils. Dried beans last decades. Canned proteins, fats like peanut butter or cooking oil, salt, sugar. These are the unsexy basics that actually keep you alive. Will you get sick of eating rice and beans every day? Absolutely. But you'll be alive to complain about it. And here's something nobody talks about. Vitamin deficiencies. You can develop scurvy from lack of vitamin C in about 3 months. That's like 13 weeks worth of bad decisions leading to pirate disease. Beriberi from lack of thiamine in about the same time frame. So throw in some multivitamins and canned vegetables. Add another $50 to your budget, still way cheaper than those fancy prepper kits. But what if the power goes out and your freezer becomes a biohazard? And this is where prep gets expensive and political. In February 2021, Texas had a massive grid failure during a winter storm. Temperatures dropped below freezing for days, and the power went out for millions of people. Over 200 people died, not from the cold directly, but from hypothermia, carbon monoxide poisoning from indoor generators, and house fires from desperate heating attempts. Pretty wild that a modern state can just lose power and people start dying within hours. Step 9 is power backup. And you've got options, but none of them are cheap. A basic gas-powered generator costs about $400 to $800 and can run your fridge, some lights, and maybe a space heater. But you'll need fuel. Gasoline goes bad after 6 months unless you use stabilizers. That's like 2 Costco trips worth of shelf life. Propane lasts forever but requires different equipment. And storing fuel at home? There are legal limits and serious fire risks. Most places cap you at 25 gallons of gasoline storage. That's maybe 20 hours of generator runtime if you're lucky. Solar setups are way more expensive up front. A decent home solar system with battery backup runs $10,000 to $30,000, depending on your power needs. But once it's installed, you've got power as long as the sun exists. Trade-offs. Here's the math you need. A standard refrigerator uses about 150 to 200 watts when running. Medical devices like oxygen concentrators? Around 300 watts. Heating or cooling? That's where things get insane. A space heater pulls 2,500 watts. That's like 10 old-school incandescent bulbs running at once. An air conditioner? 2,000 to 3,500 watts. Do the math on your generator capacity before you buy one and realize it can't actually run anything useful. Step 10 is heating and cooling without power, and this is legitimately life or death depending on where you live. In freezing temperatures, hypothermia can set in within 3 hours if you're not properly insulated. In extreme heat, heat stroke can kill you in under 2 hours, especially if you're elderly or have health conditions. During Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, the power was out for months. The heat killed nearly as many people as the hurricane itself. Your options? Propane heaters for cold, but watch for carbon monoxide. Battery-powered fans and wet towels for heat. It's not glamorous, but it beats dying. Step 11 is security. And look, I'm just saying what disaster statistics show. When infrastructure collapses, crime goes up. After Hurricane Katrina, looting became widespread within 48 hours. During the 2011 Tohoku earthquake in Japan, even in one of the most orderly societies on Earth, theft and violence increased as resources ran out. Some preppers go full tactical with firearms and body armor. Others focus on community coordination and mutual aid. Honestly, the lone wolf prepper dies first. You can't guard your house 24/7 while also sleeping and eating. You need neighbors you can trust. But power and security won't matter if you can't communicate or coordinate. How do you know when to leave? Because that's the question that determines if you live or die in certain disasters. During Hurricane Katrina, some people evacuated early and lived. Others stayed and drowned in their attics. The death toll difference? Hundreds of lives. And the people who made the wrong call had about 72 hours to figure it out before it was too late. That's like 3 days' worth of second guessing that ends in either safety or drowning. Step 12 is communication when cell towers fail, and they fail faster than you think. During major earthquakes, hurricanes, or grid failures, cellular networks go down within hours, either from physical damage or from everyone trying to call at the same time and overloading the system. So you need backup communication that doesn't rely on infrastructure. Ham radio is the gold standard. A basic setup costs $200 to $500 and can reach hundreds of miles depending on conditions. GMRS radios are cheaper at $50 to $150 but only work within a few miles. That's like shouting distance with better technology. Satellite messengers like Garmin inReach cost $300 to $600 plus a subscription, but they work anywhere on Earth. Pick your budget and coverage needs. Step 13 is family coordination plans. And get this, studies show that over 60% of American families have no emergency plan whatsoever. No rally points, no check-in protocols, no backup meeting locations if you get separated. So when disaster hits, people waste critical hours trying to find each other instead of getting to safety. Your plan needs to be simple. Primary meeting spot. Secondary meeting spot if primary is compromised. Out-of-state contact person everyone can check in with. Because local phone networks fail, but long distance sometimes works. This sounds paranoid, but it takes 20 minutes to set up and could save your life. Step 14 is evacuation readiness. Bug out bags, routes, and destinations. The Instagram prepper version has 50 pounds of tactical gear and a katana for some reason. The real version? 3 days of food, water, medications, copies of important documents, cash, and a change of clothes. Keep it under 20 pounds so you can actually carry it. Here's the rule everyone ignores. Never let your gas tank drop below half. A full tank gets you 300 to 400 miles depending on your vehicle. That's like driving from Los Angeles to San Francisco. Or in disaster terms, the difference between escaping a wildfire zone and getting stuck in traffic as flames close in. During the 2018 Camp Fire in California, people died in their cars because they ran out of gas while evacuating. You've got about 72 hours from when you first hear warnings to when things get really bad. That's your window to decide. Shelter in place or evacuate. Most people wait too long, and then the roads are gridlocked and it's too late. Not everyone has a bug-out cabin in the mountains or relatives in another state. But you should at least know which direction you drive and where. The nearest safe zone is FEMA shelter locations, hotels outside the disaster radius, anything. Okay, so you've got supplies, security, and communication. And here's what actually matters long-term, because you can have $50,000 worth of gear and still die in the first week if you don't know what you're doing. During Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, the preppers with tactical backpacks and fancy equipment struggled just as much as everyone else. Meanwhile, people with basic skills and strong community networks survived and even thrived. Pretty crazy contrast when you think about it. Step 15 is learning essential skills, not watching YouTube videos about skills, actually learning them. First aid certification takes about 8 hours and costs $50 to $100 through the Red Cross. That's like 2 fancy dinners worth of investment that could save your life. Basic home repair, food preservation like canning or dehydrating, water purification methods. These skills matter more than having a bunker full of freeze-dried meals. Why? Because knowledge weighs nothing and can't be confiscated or stolen. You can lose all your supplies in a fire or flood, but you can't lose the fact that you know how to purify water or treat a wound. That's insanely valuable. Step 16 is building community networks. And this is the controversial truth that lone wolf preppers hate hearing. You cannot survive a prolonged crisis alone. You need sleep. You need help. You need people you can trust. Studies of major disasters show that isolated individuals have dramatically higher mortality rates than people embedded in community networks. During the Great Depression, neighborhoods that formed mutual aid networks survived at much higher rates than isolated families. People pooled resources, shared food, watched each other's kids, and defended each other's property. It wasn't some kumbaya hippie thing. It was pure survival math. Step 17 is financial resilience. Bank runs happen. ATMs stop working. Credit cards become useless pieces of plastic when the grid fails. You need physical cash. The general rule is keep at least $1,000 to $3,000 in small bills at home, 20s and smaller. Because good luck getting change for a $100 bill when the power's been out for a week. That's like trying to use a gold bar at a gas station. And here's what crypto bros get wrong. Bitcoin doesn't work when there's no internet. Your phone battery dies, and suddenly your digital wallet is worthless. Cash is still king in infrastructure failure scenarios. But honestly, the best financial prep is having low debt, an emergency fund, and diversified assets. Boring, but effective. Because when the economy tanks, people with debt and no savings get destroyed. People with 3 months of expenses saved and no credit card balances, they weather the storm. So let's bring this all together with the actual smart order. So what did COVID-19 teach us? Apparently nothing, because studies show that only about 15% of Americans increased their emergency preparedness after the pandemic. The other 85% went right back to having zero plan and zero supplies. Pretty wild for a species that claims to be intelligent. Here's the actual smart order. Steps 1 and 2. Assess your risks and set up information systems. Steps 3 and 4. Water and sanitation. Steps 5 and 6. Medications and first aid. Steps 7 and 8. Food storage calculated by actual calories. Steps 9 through 11. Power, heating, and security. Steps 12 through 14. Communication, coordination, and evacuation readiness. Steps 15 through 17. Skills, community, and financial resilience. But let's be real about economic barriers. Not everyone can afford to drop thousands on prep. So here are budget-based tiers. If you've got $100, get 2 weeks of water, basic first aid supplies, and a plan. That's like 20 Starbucks lattes redirected toward not dying. If you've got $1,000, add medications, food storage basics, and a generator. If you've got $10,000, you can do the full setup with solar, communication equipment, and comprehensive supplies. Geography matters too. Hurricane zones need evacuation plans and water storage. Earthquake zones need structural safety and quick access supplies. Cold climates need heating backup. Pandemic prep looks different than natural disaster prep. One size does not fit all. And here's what actually killed people in recent major crises. Top 3 causes: contaminated water and sanitation failures, lack of medication access, and hypothermia or heat stroke from power loss. Not zombies, not societal collapse, just boring infrastructure failure killing people in boring ways. What could have saved them? Top 3 preps: stored water and sanitation supplies, stockpiled medications, and backup power or heating. We're talking maybe $500 to $2,000 in supplies, preventing tens of thousands of deaths. The math is pretty straightforward. Get this. Supply chain experts predict we're due for another major pandemic within the next 10 to 20 years. That's like 1 or 2 presidential terms away. Climate change is making natural disasters more frequent and severe. Our electrical grid is aging and vulnerable. These aren't conspiracy theories, these are mainstream expert predictions. And roughly 40% of disaster deaths are preventable with basic preparedness. That's not even advanced prepper stuff, just having water, medications, and a plan. But 85% of people do nothing. So here's your final actionable takeaway. Start with step 1 today. Not step 17. Don't buy a bunch of tactical gear and skip the basics. Assess your risks, set up alerts, then work through the list in order. Because the smartest order to prepare isn't the sexiest order or the most Instagram-worthy order. It's the order that actually keeps you alive. But if you want to know the crazy psychological reason we don't prepare even when we know we should, that's a whole other video about normalcy bias and why humans are terrible at risk assessment. Maybe we'll save that for next time.